December 18th, I have the privilege and opportunity of visiting with my good friend Heinz who throughout the years has given me many stories of his experience in the German Navy, plus some of his other experiences, and I feel real fortunate tonight to be able to sit here and discuss very informally some of the things that he's exchanged ideas with me over the years, and I think it's going to be kind of interesting for him to reminisce on some of the things that he did too. And I told him to tell it as it is, so we'll take it that way. First of all, though, Heinz why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your birthplace? So we'll start with your younger years, then we'll kind of get into the war, and we'll kind of take it from there. So mainly place of birth and where it was and what kind of a town you grew up in.
Actually, it's Hanover, northern part of Germany. Some people, or most people that travel to Europe or Germany, they go to Bavaria. Nobody really knows how nice the northern part of Germany really can be, especially when you are born there.
I certainly agree, Heinz, because we had a chance to take a trip there this summer, and we had always gone down to the southern part, and I think that would certainly verify that there's some beauty there that most people don't know about.
Especially people that like oceans, harbors, fishing vessels. I mean, beaches. We don't have that in Hanover, but it's only an hour and a half to the North Sea.
Yeah.
So that privilege we didn't have when I was born. Only business people had cars, very few private people. Doctors even went to see their patients on bicycles.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And if the kid got injured, I put him on a bicycle and drove to the doctor. We didn't have telephones.
Now, in our previous discussion, you had mentioned that your dad had died when you were kind of young. Tell us a little bit about your dad and mother during those days.
I really don't know too much about those early days. Of course, my mother got a second child, which my 3-year younger brother, and I only remember my mother working from day one, as far back as I can remember, in print shops, and later on during the war she worked in the armament factories. But we still had a good childhood. We were always wondering what are they talking about when the big fights were going on, the different parties, and mother went to go for elections, and we didn't know much about it. We asked, what did you vote for? They never told us.
Now, during the time that you were, you were probably 6 or so, was that, was the German nationalists, the Nazis, were they starting then already, or was
they were
Germany
fighting for the place in the sun, you know. They were, in our street we had 3 different kinds of flags. The Nazi flag, commies, and Social Democrats. And they were always overnight. One flagpole was broken up, cut down. The next night, the other party's flagpole was broken down. Still, they put guards there. I mean, civilians. And I mean, Hitler wasn't even in power when I was 6 years old. But I knew.
Do you remember hearing of his movement or anything? It didn't mean anything.
There were
to you?
fights in the streets all the time.
Mhm.
But we were always, I always heard the people talk about unemployment and going for unemployment office. I had no idea what that was as a kid. You have no idea.
Mhm.
And
Well, Germany was really first starting to recover then. They were really, you had the high inflation and all the other things
it's
too.
really, I mean, just almost like overnight. When Hitler came to power, things changed overnight.
Mhm.
They started to build up, I mean, the working people in those days had a hard time to afford a house.
Mhm.
But now working people had a little family house, a little one family house, and
So he was
family
really
house.
pretty popular when you were a kid.
You
in
better
the
believe it.
60s, and
There was
doing
no
the
more.
economy.
There was no more crime, so to speak, on the streets because they were very tough, very tough with criminals.
Mhm.
Youth. I mean, we had respect for teachers anyways. That was a person you didn't talk back to a teacher. I mean, they had it a lot easier than now the teachers, and we all had to join Hitler Youth.
Mhm.
That was organized. That was disciplined.
That was like when you were 7, 8 years old, and
Hitler Youth, they already started out with the real young ones, 7, 8, 9. But when you were 14, you ended up in a higher class Hitler Youth,
Oh.
and they were organized in.
So there was progression to this.
Oh yes,
movement.
up from 14 years old, you ended up in a different class.
Did everybody have to be in that, or did you have?
That
a
was a
choice?
must. That was
You
a
didn't have
must.
no choice.
No, that was a must.
Yeah.
But a lot of people sneaked their way out of it. Farm boys.
Mhm.
It was very important to get the harvest in.
Mhm.
They didn't have to show up to the meetings. I snuck my way out of these meetings the sneaky way again. There was, for instance, there was the normal Hitler Youth, then there was the Air Force Hitler Youth,
Oh.
the
Almost like an army of different.
Cavalry Hitler Youth,
Oh, I didn't know that.
motorized Hitler Youth, so you could take your pick what you liked. So I told my guys, hey, I'm going to the Navy guys.
So,
Nice
so
uniforms.
part of your earlier days before you were in the Navy was actually your involvement in the Navy Hitler Youth thing. So
Yeah.
you were kind of steering yourself toward.
But
the Navy.
those guys I didn't like either, because I was a new guy, and after rowing down the river up and down, I had to clean out the boat
Mhm.
and get the oars back into the shed. I figured to hell with that. So that was the last meeting I went there. So I told these guys I'm going back to the other group. And my group, I said, I'm in the Navy, Hitler Youth. I never got another order to show up for a meeting.
They didn't know where you were.
But otherwise, they even had an organization that was Hitler Youth. They were like police, military police.
Oh, is that right?
They
Gestapo type thing, huh?
They had no military police
Mm.
in
MP.
uniforms. Yeah, they had a little armband, and boy, they had quite an authority. When you went into a movie which wasn't allowed for kids under 17, they were standing out there when the film was over and checking. You come over here, you come over here. You are not 17. And they gave you a warning. So that was well organized, I mean.
That was the Hitler Youth doing that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I must say, for a lot of people, it was a good thing, because they learned discipline,
Discipline. Yeah.
they learned to follow orders, and they learned to clean up their own mess.
And at that time, the country was starting to get pretty prosperous.
Yes,
So,
there was another. It was not military. It was the working units. They had dark brown uniforms. They didn't have rifles. They had a spade, and these guys worked in on autobahns, and
Oh, okay.
everybody had
Civil type engineering.
No, but they were uniforms, organized. Everybody had to go in there for a year before you go in the militaries. But I didn't have to go because I volunteered in the Navy.
Okay.
So I didn't have to go into this. They used them even on the Eastern Front to build bunkers and stuff. I mean, this was
In our earlier conversation, you had mentioned that you were quite young when your dad died, and you mentioned he died at sea. What happened? Did the ship sink,
they went swimming.
It was
And
swimming.
you know, you have these undercurrents
Mhm.
on the oceans. He just disappeared.
So you were how old at that time then?
I was 3
Okay.
years old, you know.
And then your mother basically worked hard, and you mentioned something in our earlier conversation about rationing, and if you held a job where you worked for the military, you'd get double rationing or something
Yeah.
like that.
Or really heavy jobs,
Mm-hmm.
like even in street constructions or so. I mean, those were, or bunker construction. Those people all got double rations.
That was because
Even
you were-
cigarettes were on ration.
Yeah, so that was really, there was a shortage of food. Now, the war was on already at this time then, is that correct?
Yeah.
You were into the war already at that time. So there were shortages.
On everything.
Shortages of everything.
Shoes and clothes, and everything was on points.
Yeah. Now, you also did you live with your grandfather, or was your grandfather?
No, actually, we talked about religion before. My grandmother had 50 kids, and
That was your grandmother on your mother's side? Or
yes,
Oh, okay.
and my grandfather kind of got to know some people, Seventh-day Adventists,
Well, that's how the
like going from door to door and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So he got convinced that's the better religion, and those two split up. To us, divorce was something terrible in those days. The whole area knew if somebody got divorced, you're like, oh no, everybody they got divorced. But these two just split.
It was town gossip then. wasn't
Yeah.
it? Oh, yeah.
But these two guys just split.
Yeah.
He built himself a little shed out in the countryside.
Well, who took care of the 15 kids?
Well, they were, in the meantime, most of them learned baker because they had to have a job where they could eat.
Mm-hmm.
And the older ones took care of the little ones, and they all had to work, and they all had to give most of their earnings, give it to the mother. You know, they couldn't keep the money away.
Okay, so now, when you were going into the service, you knew you were going to have to enlist in something, or you'd been drafted.
Oh yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you selected going into the Navy, and how old were you at
Well,
that?
Navy was always, like I said before, water, ships.
You like that?
I always liked that, yes.
Yeah.
We played on those gravel pits as little kids, and did some fishing, and ran away from game wardens. I mean, we didn't have a license.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, water, I always liked ships.
So you always had a like for water, didn't you? Now that that was in 1943. So how old were you?
42 I joined.
42. How old were you then when you went into the Navy?
17.
17. Was that the youngest you could go in, or
Yeah.
that was?
Nobody under 17.
Oh, okay. All right. Then tell us a little bit about when you first went in there. What type of training? How did the training program go when you got there? What did you do? Where'd you go?
This was in Wesermünde. It's close to Bremerhaven.
Mm-hmm.
That was a giant complex. I bet you they had 5,000 new recruits there. Giant buildings, barracks. That was a lot of people have never been away from home. I wasn't either. But this pre-military training like Hitler, you did a lot of good for most of them. because they were kind of prepared. But a lot of people were not prepared. There were even suicides. I mean,
Even at that young age. Huh?
yeah, it was that tough. It was really tough.
So your first years was a general type training, similar to everybody,
3 months.
Army, Navy, all got the first couple of months the same.
3 months.
What we call
3 months
training.
basic training.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they sent the people to some specialized. I mean, there were some I was an engraver. There was no use for that in the Navy. But
I forgot to ask you. Now, when did you, in the course from when you were small to when you went into the Navy, did you?
When I was 14 years old.
You went into engraving school or what?
Apprentice in an engraving shop. Because 90%, 95% of our classmates, they all learned a trade. Mechanics and all that.
I need to mention, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention in the beginning here when I was starting out, that Heinz and his sons actually, our relation really goes back to, he was a engraver that...
1966.
1966, so for all these years he's done engraving for our company Custom Mold, and that's how we really got to know each other. And then of
I
course
remember your beautiful Christmas parties.
Is that right?
With an organ there.
Yeah, we celebrated a little.
There was an organ player from the North Stars.
Yeah, right. That's right. You got good memory, right? Yeah. Okay, so now you went from the boot training. You went into the more into the Navy type training then.
Yeah, everybody got sent into a special. Like I said, mechanics. They were sent to mechanical schools. They became the mechanics on submarines and that was the good part. Young people in Germany, when they were 17, they already had a trade. 17
They
years
knew
old.
what they were going to do.
I was a journeyman engraving, a journeyman and electricians, radio mechanics. They became the radio operators on ships. I mean, the Navy didn't have to do much. They were already trained.
Pre-trained, yeah. They just selected the areas.
Electricians became the operator on electric instruments and machinery. The diesel mechanics, they became the operators of the diesel engines.
So they just really had to tune them into what, there was enough technical training that they could just kind of siphon these guys in. And
yes, specialized.
So they were kind of like pre-trained.
And they were tool and die makers. They were the guys that took care of the weapons. Guns. I mean, that was a beautiful setup.
Okay, now...
So I was sent to a anti-aircraft school in the North Sea.
And
getting to use...
that's what they would fly by and you'd shoot at targets then? Or what?
That was for about, that was 2 months.
So were you a pretty good shot?
I never understood this. What is it called? This round thing with all the lines in there.
Oh.
I never understood that kind of an. They said you let the plane come in and first, and then 1/3 of it and then you fire. I always went by the tracers.
Yeah.
Fired one shot and then I corrected it. Some people went too close to the airplane, you know.
That was not real popular neither, huh?
You know, there's a guy in there and he has a family. You better watch it. I mean, they gave him a lot of shit.
Okay, so now how you got into submarines was the Navy, you had no choice. The Navy was going to send you wherever you were going to go, and you were sent to submarines then, right?
Then you went from anti-aircraft school, you went to a submarine school. That was another 2 months. Where you learn the inside and
how did they, on the submarine, now when you get into the submarine, how did they determine what your job would be on the submarine? Whether you're going to be a radio man or helmsman or...
Whatever your trade was.
Okay.
See, I had no trade they could use. Engraver they couldn't use. So I became what they called deck personnel.
Oh, okay.
The guys that take care of the deck, steering, and I was deck personnel.
Okay, now, you're getting ready to go into the sub. Let's talk a little bit about the submarine itself. In American feet, about what was the length of the German U-boat that was pretty
Ours
common?
was 60 meters, that's times 380.
180 feet
Feet.
long, yeah. And
50 guys on there.
50 guys, and you worked in 3 shifts.
Mhm.
And that's what you call hot bunking. And there was always
Yeah.
somebody, there was always somebody.
Always had a nice warm bed.
Yeah. And,
Yeah, but before you ever became a member of a submarine crew, you went to more schooling. That included a 30 meters, 90 feet deep diving pod, they called it.
you mean, you physically had to dive in 90 feet of water?
That was like a giant cylinder, 90 feet deep,
Hmm.
and there was a chamber underneath, just like a submarine control room, with a hatch. So about 15 guys could go in there with diving equipment,
Hmm.
and then they opened some valves and to get the. I mean, you couldn't open the hatch against the water pressure,
Yeah.
so they had to let some water come down.
So they kind of
into the
flooded you
chamber.
while you're in there.
Up to here about, and then the pressure, there was only that much air left. But everybody wanted to put their fingers in the ears, you know. Pain, pain, I mean the pressure.
Because as that water came in, the pressure built up, yeah.
The air was compressed more and more
Then
and
you would
more.
finally open
And
the
then they
hatch.
finally could easily open the hatch, and there's like a cylinder goes down so the water can't rush out, it stays. So then the poor devils that couldn't swim, they would rather die than do this. I was always very comfortable with water. You just float up as slow as possible,
So that really wasn't a scary
hoping that never happens in real life.
Yeah. Hmm.
So and from then on, after you went through this, then you were sent to a shipyard, and I was sent to a Hamburg shipyard where the boat was almost completed. See, the technical personnel was there way before I came.
Oh.
They had to know where all the pipes were and all the vents and all
Oh, so
that.
you're saying that some of the crew that
They
was
were
gonna go on
right
that
there.
boat, they were there while it was being built?
Yes,
Oh.
the last let's say 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
They were not there when just the hull was there.
Mm-hmm.
But,
But
when,
when it
they,
was
when they
fitting.
start putting the engines in and all the valves and all that, then that's when the technical personnel was there already,
And studying-
watching the guys.
Studying how everything would work,
Yeah.
so they knew. Oh,
And I came when the boat was just about ready to go. The deck personnel.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So-
when we decided, when they decided the boat is not fit for front missions because there's some bomb damage.
Now, Heinz so I get the story straight, was that the boat that sank before you made it out, when they were towing it out, where it was towed into a pier or something?
No,
Oh, you never had that problem with your boat then?
no, this was, this was, like I said before, it was ordered to a school flotilla.
Mhm.
This was the newest boat there, so when we submerged, maybe we did diving maybe 20, 30 times a day. Down, up, because we were training future officers, submarine officers.
So originally, you were not actually at that point actively going after ships or anything?
No, this was just training.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said before, the commander said, I mean, every young guy wants to get some medals and stuff. And I wasn't different. Up to that point, like we said before, up to that point they were sinking ships and they were very successful. And I just wanted to be part of it too. And since they asked me, I said, oh, yes, would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Now, then you got, then did somebody come up and say, okay, now you can go on a ship that's going into combat? That was your,
I was ordered then to Kiel.
from the training ship, you went to the ship that was
Yeah.
was
They
going
needed
on.
one guy. One guy had appendicitis, or so they needed one guy.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a week later they already went on their first mission.
Mhm. Okay, now, this sub that you were on, tell us a little bit about the commander, and how you related to him or how the crew related to him.
No, the first time I met that crew, I already wanted to turn back. That was a beautiful Sunday afternoon, all quiet, all the barracks, and this was in the Kiel harbor. All the barracks were empty, everybody was ashore and having some fun, and I saw a bunch of guys with gas masks and steel helm running around the square in the barracks and singing, and a gun and running and running. I looked at these idiots on a Sunday afternoon, so I asked that guy at the gate, I said, who is that? Which boat is that? 479.
That was your boat? And these guys were all gung-ho.
So I go inside, all the officers were there, the commander, and I did this one here and gave him my book. So he opens it up, and I had already a few days of jail in there. Aha, we get one of those.
Or you had, your record wasn't that good already?
No, I had some mischieving things done before.
That wasn't, and we're gonna talk a little bit about where you really got into trouble, but you had been into
Yeah.
trouble before that. So, and it's,
Stupid things.
for the camera, why don't you explain the book? You know, you mentioned the book here, the blue book. What,
Yeah,
describe a little bit what the
every
blue
sailor
book.
had. This book was normally not in your possession, but when you were moved or commanded to another place, you took this along. That was like a, what would you call this book nowadays?
Log?
Record book or something?
A log, yeah.
Not really a log book, because you never saw it.
Oh, okay.
You never saw the inside.
Mhm.
It was sealed.
Personnel file or something like that.
We were on the submarine school, what I mentioned before, and there was an island in the lake, and they said nobody steps on that island, you know, it was a bird sanctuary. And of course, me and my buddy, it's like forbidden fruit, you know. They said nobody steps on it, let's go.
So you swam out
We
there?
swim there, the whole bunch of Navy guys on the beach swimming, and we figured nobody will know when we go there. The moment we step on that island, thousands of birds up in the sky, a dark cloud, and nobody could miss us there. We thought we'd sneak up on that island and
Yeah.
look at the nests and everything.
Yeah.
On the way back, come over here, you two.
Some more writing into the book.
3 days in jail.
Mm.
3 days in jail.
Well, you couldn't have been much over 18 years old then.
No, then I was 18, yeah. But
Yeah.
I was always revolting. Always revolting.
Why did you do that? Did you think it was, you just, you
Just
always
a kid.
challenged the authority?
Just a stupid kid still.
Yeah, just, yeah.
Doing stupid things, you know.
Yeah.
And I kept on doing that. Always against the orders.
So so then actually now you're on the boat and you're getting ready. Now your boat was to go out, you were supposed to torpedo something with this boat, weren't you?
Yes, We
Tell
had
us a little bit about
we had 14.
how many ships you sank, what you torpedoed.
We were just ready to fight. 14 torpedoes on board. 4 of them were laying on the floor plates, and you had to sleep on top of them. And because we had food stored everywhere, in some of the bunks we had bread and fresh fruit.
It was a little bit like the movie Das Boot.
Oh,
You did have
and there
stuff
was a
hanging.
net hanging with bread, you know, loaves of bread.
And you bring hams on and stuff like that. So
Oh,
you
all
really
that.
had to take a lot of food on board, didn't you?
Yeah, and they couldn't hide anything. The only thing they were hiding was the booze. Everything was open, everything else, food. I ate so many oil sardines, big cans like this. Took one, cut it open with my knife and sit in the dark and put down a whole can of oil sardines. And I sneaked that can up next time and toss it overboard.
Toss it overboard. But they had so much on there. Now, you did say that the Navy was fed the submariners really good compared to other parts of the
But
service.
on this boat, I was out of luck from day one.
Besides, you
matter
got
what.
off to a bad start with the commander to start with,
Yeah,
and you had a bunch of gung-ho guys on there too.
and the officers, they were, I couldn't get along with them.
Now-
Young guys.
Did you have to do any Heil Hitler stuff or anything like that, or
On
was
board,
that
no.
never on board? So saluting and all the formalities once you're on board.
Yeah, you did this stuff, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
When you came on board or left,
Mm-hmm.
report back, you had to do this one here.
Now, while we're having
But no Hitler stuff was mentioned.
dinner tonight here, you mentioned the condition of the moisture on the boat and how the food.
You could
Describe for the camera some of the.
You could see the moisture running down
Yeah,
the
and then
walls.
describe the mold, how that,
Yeah.
what was, you were talking about bread and, everything was moldy, huh?
They all developed hair, green hair, quarter-inch long.
Everything had green
If it got to a quarter-inch, you couldn't use it anymore.
Yeah,
So you know, in the beginning, we cleaned that mold off the bread
yeah.
and still ate it.
But how long, now you never baked bread on board, or did the cook ever?
Oh, he made buns.
Oh,
Yes,
buns,
once in a
okay.
while, yes. Sundays or so,
Mm-hmm.
he made buns.
But the bread actually must have got pretty old after you were on board for a while, or?
It got, before it was eaten up, it turned moldy. We had to toss it.
Mm-hmm.
Can't keep anything.
Now, did you have trouble, like, what else got moldy on the ship? Was it?
No, sausage, it doesn't do any damage, but our stuff, you know, jackets,
Mhm.
when they
So
were
even-
hanging for a while.
Even your clothes would get moldy?
Yeah.
Because,
Mind you never undressed, so you're warm all the time. You never undressed.
wait, you never undressed.
You washed as good as you could.
Mm-hmm.
There were only two johns in a submarine, one in the kitchen, and that one was used for storage, never used for its job. So 50 guys used one toilet. And boy, sometimes you had to wait if 50 guys have to go. And underwater, you couldn't use it anymore when you were over, I guess it was over 30 meters, you couldn't use it against the pressure.
They couldn't discharge the waste anymore at that.
No, because you had a pump against the pressure.
Well,
of the
I
water.
mean, just, human people are human beings. What did you do if you had
Well,
to go
you
bad?
Take a tin can and do it right in there,
Mm.
and put diesel fuel on top, and put it between the torpedo pipes. And then when there was some fast diving, the whole shebang went into the bilge. I mean, rolled down there.
So
Plates and silverware and everything came down.
So you must have had some pretty toxic smells on
But
that.
you never smelled that stuff. I mean, the diesel fuel was such a strong smell.
Why did
There's
you,
nothing you smell.
Why did you have such a small diesel fuel? Was there leaks, or because you were using it in cans and stuff?
No, diesel fuel, we were using it to clean the floor plats too. The floor, in the middle was steel, and on the sides there was kind of linoleum. And we cleaned that stuff with diesel fuel.
Didn't
Old racks and,
didn't that make it slippery though?
no, not really. It was this, the steel like you have on some trucks, you know.
No, okay.
It's
Corrugated,
perforated,
yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And we all had shoes that you don't slip with.
Now you
shoes.
mentioned you never, was there like rubber sole shoes in, or?
I think it was leather.
Hmm.
I think it was leather. The deck personnel had boots. Machine personnel had lower shoes, sure. Deck personnel had long leather jackets down to here. Real nice warm jackets.
Now, you mentioned, Heinz, that you never, how many changes of clothes did you guys have, and how long would you have to wear your clothes?
Boy, I wore my clothes sometimes a whole week, underwear.
Mm-hmm.
And then you wash it yourself real quick in salt water and hang it someplace. And
But it never really ever dries, does it? Totally.
you could maybe dry it, but boy, nobody shaved and nobody changed.
How about like
clothes.
your trousers and your shirts and stuff, other than underclothes? You just kept wearing that?
Yeah.
So what'd you have, like 2 or 3 outfits that you could change off?
I only had one outfit. I
Is that
only
right?
had one outfit, yeah.
So you had to wear that.
You wash that, and I wore that stuff for 3 weeks without even washing it.
But if everybody had a strong smell, it didn't make much difference.
No, you didn't smell it.
Did you actually get used to that then, after you're
You
done?
didn't smell it anymore. If everybody smells,
You don't. If everybody smells, you don't smell it then?
no way.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
No way.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about. Now we're going out to see.
It's like eating onions. It bothers the next person, but if he ate onions, it doesn't bother him anymore.
Yeah. Okay, now you're going out to specifically go out and blow up some ships or do something. What kind of torpedoing did you guys do? What did you all hit? What did you sink? Where'd you?
Like I mentioned before, half of the torpedoes didn't blow up. Sabotaged material. And he hit an island. He shot. The torpedo went under a ship and exploded on an island behind the ship, and which is a dangerous thing. Now they know there's somebody there out for them.
Yeah.
And we got depth charged one time real bad. The amazing part is there is a power. I believe in that people can heal themselves. That I believe in. Has nothing to do with a
Describe that more.
power.
You mean?
I had, for instance, I had stomach cramps at one time. They thought it was appendicitis. Nobody was sure. It was unbearable. I couldn't stand up anymore. So they put me in one of the officers' bunks where I had my piece, put 5 blankets on because I was shaking and pale, and I was laying there, half dozing, and all of a sudden we get depth charges. And the first explosion of a depth charge, I jumped out of this bunk, running to the front where the crew was, grabbing my diving equipment, which is a little package, and my pain was gone. Completely gone. Never came back. And they all looked at me. So, was he faking? That shock.
No kidding. What is it like when you're? What is it like the movies? Does the ship shake when a depth charge goes?
No, ours didn't. They didn't come close enough. But the lights flickered and some water broke in. It is undescribable. You cannot describe it.
Can you hear the depth charge going into the water or not?
Yes, and you can hear the prop up there when he's moving closer or moving away.
So were you guys at the bottom then, sitting at the bottom?
See, that's the biggest trouble. The Baltic Sea is not deep. So we were maybe at the most 180 feet deep, and that's not deep for a submarine. That is very critical. But we were in good shape, and so far the Russians were not technically not too far advanced.
Well, that was a Russian ship that
Yes,
was
in the Baltic Sea, we only had to fight the Russians.
Oh, okay.
See, the British and Americans probably would have finished us right there. The Russians couldn't find us. They were close, had about 20 depth charges. And it is scary. And it is quiet down there, I can tell you that. Nobody can drop this here. Nobody says anything, it's all like a grave. Up until you hear a water bubble or something, and that was the old man's fault.
How long does that go on? How long will that be?
That was
half
about,
an hour? Or?
they were sneaking around there for an hour, looking for us. But we were on the bottom end, quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And one wrench falling on the floor plate, that would put
They
the
would
power.
hurt it. They would hurt it. Huh?
So that is, it's hard to describe, but nobody thought they would get us now. You always, when you're young, you figure, this will not kill me. But you're still,
When it happens, though, you get pretty scared, though.
you are totally helpless. There's no way out.
Mm-hmm.
And you think already. And we were trained with these diving equipments, you know. 60 meters is still a safe depth to escape, you know. And we were trained not to come out of the water, because the Russians were known for shooting survivors in the water. So we were supposed to dive away from the sub. But you tell that in school it's okay, but
In the real world, it doesn't work that way.
no, so
Well, did your now?
survive that.
So now, as we discussed a little bit while we were having dinner tonight, you need to tell the story of now you're on this sub and you're not getting along with the commander that good, but tell us the story, Heinz, of where things really went downhill as far as your next experience in getting into trouble, and that was, I think, with the food thing, was it? Let's talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
that was, I mean, it is a boring job anyways. Day and night, you never really know what is it daylight up there or what. It's the same thing all the time. General Vlasov, they ran over to the German lines by the thousands. And he asked the German High Command, give us weapons, we'll fight against communism. And Adolf didn't trust them. So that would have been a good deal to let these guys fight them, like they do in Afghanistan. Or let those people do it. Their own people, they know it better. Anyways, for these guys, they were traitors. And
they were looking for him.
They kicked them down into this hole, and everybody empties his handgun. They were praying on their knees and crying, and they killed them all. And then they looked on, Ruski, no, I'm German. And then
now, how did you told me they knew that because they knew they weren't German, huh?
If you talk to someone in the end. As you know right away. They couldn't even speak German.
So they just plain shot all those people right there, huh?
Shot them right there, 5, 6 guys, emptied all their bullets, all the guns. And we then were put into a bunch with some infantry soldiers and marching slowly but surely through the front, and then we saw how the Russians were equipped. Hundreds of guns over here and over here, as far as you can see. And heavier guns. They had tremendous equipment. I wonder if it was half of it was American equipment. We saw some Ford trucks, Army trucks.
So then, they took you back to kind of a camp
area? Then we march, then we keep on marching.
Back through their lines?
Through their lines, left and right. You saw still the fighting troops, but the fighting was already over. Now they came, and in the meantime we were maybe 200 prisoners. And they came from left and right, and looking, there's a guy still has some boots. We had only one guard. He couldn't take care of us. He kind of was a nice guy. He said, back, go back. And he fired even some shots in the air to keep the Russians away. But these guys came and pulled the guys into a ditch, kicked them in the butt and took the boots. And some said, no, my boot. Hit them in the face. And like I said, this guy tried to protect us. And then came a Russian officer on horseback. He saw what this guy did, and he went by there and hit it with a whip right in the face, because he chased the Russians away. So, boy, we were in for something good there. And then the troops that went towards the front still, they stayed on their troop carriers and peed down on us, a whole bunch. Or once in a while they opened the door, going 30, 40 miles an hour, and bang, 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 the prisoners keeled over like flies, you know. Oh, gee, that was a feeling. And
you mean they pee on you while you went by?
Yeah, off their trucks, you know, right on top of us. And then we stopped overnight. There was a little cemetery and a little chapel. We stayed overnight in this chapel, and of course no food, thirsty. And there was a little creek going by the cemetery, and we all went down there, and in the water there were big rocks and boulders in the river, and we were all drinking that creek water till the Russians chased us out again. And in the morning we looked at it, what we thought were boulders were dead people and horses in that creek. Dead horses and dead people, and we drank in there. Oh, yeah, I can tell you, the older fellows, they died away like flies. Us young guys, we survived that.
Oh.
And they're dead.
It was full of dead people and dead horses.
Yeah, and even on that cemetery, we saw fairly young soldiers. He must have been had many wounds. He had bandages here, he had bandages here, and bandages here, but the whole belly full of machine gun bullets. So the Russians just killed him right there, a wounded soldier. And then we had to clean up a little village, the main street. We had to clean that up. There were dead people, dead horses all over. We had to put them into a giant crater, bomb crater. Horses and people all in one crater. Nobody ever knew where their sons or fathers disappeared.
Those were German people then?
Yeah.
The horses were from what, the German army or Russian army? Or
They were actually farmers' horses. They were running loose all over the place.
Oh, they got
cows
killed.
and horses,
They got
everything
killed.
was,
Yeah.
and they killed them. Airplanes killed them, made fun of it. And it was chaos. And then we end up in a giant barracks with maybe 3,000 prisoners.
The barracks, was that a German building?
Former army barracks. Yeah.
Former army barracks. They used it as a prison camp then.
Yeah. Just temporarily.
Mhm.
And there, and I can tell you one thing. it
Being
was-
captured by Russians was not a good thing.
No, we all wish we would fight the Americans and be captured by them. There were some atrocities too, but the former prisoners I talked to that lived in America, in American prison camps in Canada, they lived a good life.
Mhm.
They got good food, they worked in the woods or whatever. But here now in this prison camp, what happens now? Now the Russians sifted out the sickies, the old people. Some of them they sent home right away. But then the ones that could work, group 1, group 2, group 3. Group 1 ended up in Siberia right away. Those were the muscle guys. And there was a Russian doctor, a woman. She was from a different race. She was sitting there. And we were all in big lines, and Russian nurses all over. They had to undress totally naked. And she was sitting there. Come here. Grabs your ass. Good, good. Turn around. Sack up. What? Lift sack up. You had to stand there.
Oh.
And all the nurses there, you know. She was looking for a hernia or something. That was humiliating. So I was group 1, one of the young strong guys. And they put us into another camp.
I mean, now you were actually a very healthy person, so you would have. Why didn't you end up going to Siberia then?
I told you a story before. We were sent to another where they
Oh.
used to race
Oh, okay.
fancy, beautiful horses. That was another camp. And there, from then on, they sent groups to Siberia every day. And that Russian sergeant said, come over
Okay,
here.
that's when you
You
get
stay here.
Okay, and he was in the baking. Or?
He was in charge of a bakery, and it was all German bakers.
Mhm.
They baked for the prisoners. I was in there for maybe 2 weeks, and then he said, no, I can't keep you any longer. I will close the bakery. That camp was dissolved. And I came back to the big city again, where I started out. Ended up in a small camp, and we worked in a paper mill, and then in the woods, and in a mechanical outfit, and then in a paper mill. You know, as a prisoner, you always get inventive. There were some mechanics, there were some goldsmiths in a deep lower basement in a paper mill. half full of water, we found some old German transformers. And the guy said, I know there's some oil in there. I think it's paraffin oil, they call it. You can't eat it. And we were after everything you could eat. Cats or whatever we could catch. And they had big brass nuts on there, on these transformers. So we took all the brass nuts off to make rings, you know. And some people smuggled in old containers, smuggled this oil out into the camp. And what we did, a little bit of bread we had, we toasted it on a stove, and we put this oil on there. And a little salt.
Oil from the transformers?
Yeah.
But it was paraffin oil.
Yeah, the guy, and no wait, they put some salt and tasted beautiful, this oil. And the doctor we had at least 20 doctors, German doctors in the camp. But they all worked like we, only one was a camp doctor. And the one guy said, bring me some stuff too, the body doesn't take it. It goes out the way it comes in. But it doesn't harm you. But it tastes good, it tastes like nut oil, you know, peanut oil.
Called paraffin oil.
So every time you had let a fart, you had an oil spot in your pants like this. And you could always see, there's one of us. Where did you find that stuff? What do you mean? Come on. You could see the guys that had the connections too, you know.
Oh,
So, but the
is
rings,
that paraffin oil?
yeah.
Your body never digested
And the
it.
bigger the oil spot in the pants, you know that sucker has a lot of that stuff. And you
But it was substance.
yeah, you traded it for cigarettes and sugar and stuff.
How did you know it wasn't poison?
Oh, the doctor told us.
Oh, okay.
He said, you can eat it, it doesn't do you any good or doesn't do you any harm. It goes out the way it comes in, and we found out.
So then you're, as we were talking about when we had lunch, you actually got to, he kind of saved you from going the
Siberia road.
yeah, because you told me they were looking for you?
Oh yeah, they.
Or how was that?
There was a, they call it a brigade, 100 people, and this one guy was responsible for it. The Russians told him, you keep your guys together here. When we leave, we want to see them all. And they were looking for me. Hawk, where's Hawk? Where's Hawk? Oh, I seen him yesterday. Now, where is he? Where is he? This Russian sergeant, you stay here, shut up.
The Russian sergeant helped you?
Yeah, till they were all gone, you know. But there were plenty of people starving. And
Why do you think the Russian sergeant liked you? Did you just get along good with
well,
him?
I was a young kid, you know, starving and scraping for food, and he maybe had a son like me, or whatever. He was an older
Well,
guy.
in fact, that's how he told me he found you. You were trying
No,
to scoop some soup
Behind
out
the kitchen, there were all kinds of containers. They were empty already, but you know when you tip a pot over on its side, there's always a spoonful of soup still in there.
Mhm.
So I scraped all these pots. I watched nobody see me, and I scraped it out of there. And he saw me do that. He figured that poor devil is starving. So he helped me. And I was lucky. I stayed in East Prussia.
Then you till the war ended. Then that's
No, the war was over. May 8th, I got captured. April 25.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed till September 49.
Well, wait a minute. Didn't the Russians release you when
No.
when the war was over?
And I was one of the early birds to go home. Some prisoners stayed for 15 years. The Russians told us, if you get caught stealing potatoes or anything, you will go to Siberia for a handful of potatoes.
So after the war, I didn't know this, Heinz. After the war was over, they kept you as a prisoner
Yeah.
for what, 4 years?
And some stayed for 15 years in Siberia. Some are probably still there. And most of them
Weren't they
come
supposed to release you by the agreement
No.
of the war?
back. No.
they could do whatever they wanted, right?
Yeah.
They were the winners.
I mean, while they played football and baseball over here, the people over there were starving behind barbed wires. And we were still in better shape compared to the Russians. The Russian labor camps, they were in worse shape than we were. They were all Russians.
You mean Russians in Russian labor camps?
Mhm.
These were Russians that didn't agree with the Russian regime, or what?
Or stealing, or do something, you know.
Yeah.
But one thing is, like I said before, when this depth charge attack, what certain things do to you, the first year or two, nobody ever mentioned sex in a prison camp. Just food. Food, food, food. My mother did pancakes like this. Oh, you're crazy. You have to use eggs and then you put a little flour in there and no, my mother did it this. They were arguing about food every day and all day and dreaming about food. And that one day we had a nice bakery in the camp. Didn't do any good because we only got 600 grams. But the Russians picked up bread in there too, white bread. And one day there was one good-looking Russian female doctor, nice uniform, you know, nice shape. And she comes out of that bakery with 2 loaves of white bread under her arm. And hundreds of hungry eyes were looking at her. And I wonder if she knew what we were looking at. Everybody looked at the bread. Not one looked at that woman's body. Everybody wished, oh, if I could get that bread, what she has under her arms there.
Were you hungry most of the time
Yeah,
then?
in the Russian prison camp, yes. Till the last year, then things got better. But before that, we ate the most impossible things. They had these silos in the harbor there, grain silos, and they were all destroyed. And all the grain was burnt to a crisp.
Yeah, yeah.
But some of us found out this black grain has a little bit of white inside. The outside of the grain is totally brown.
Yeah, right.
So, and some had some old coffee mills, you know, coffee grinders. And whenever we had a chance, sneak away, grab some of this burnt grain and fill your pockets with it. And back in the camp, we took that coffee grinder and then we cooked this stuff. It tasted kind of a little bitter and sour. It was almost like tar, like pudding, but black, totally black. And we ate that stuff. Can you imagine? We ate that. That's how hungry we were.
You didn't care what it tasted like, you just said eat something.
Yeah, it was something to eat. And boy, that was all you had in the.
You didn't get any meat or anything like that?
No, a little bit of oil in the soup and meat. Once in a while that's the strange part. The Russians, once in a while, 12 guys got one smoked salmon, once a year. And you know 12 guys, so you get a little piece there.
Yeah.
And then the next day, all you get is cabbage soup again, 3 times a day. So food was a problem. We stole, I mean the Russians even didn't have much. They asked us, some Russians before their payday came, "Comrade, bread, you got bread for cigarette and stuff like this?" I mean, sometimes they asked the prisoners if they have something to eat. And we watched them in a factory in some dark spots. They were hiding there. They were hiding there. A slice of bread and an onion and maybe a little piece of sausage. They were hiding it under the steps and then go back to work. And we were watching for this. And as soon as the girl left, we went there and stole their food. I mean, stealing food and tools and stealing a pair of pliers over here, go to the next building, selling it for tobacco again, and I mean, it is a survival thing. That's all it is.
Yeah, it was. That's what you're talking about.
And
Oh gosh, Heinz, I just never realized, I thought that when the war was over, you got out. I never realized you spent.
No, that is a bad part. And there's a Russian word for skoro domoy. That means soon home, to go home soon. And they said skoro domoy for 5 years. We asked him many times, hey, when you mean how stories come up? Next week everybody goes home. That goes around like a fire. There was nothing to it. Somebody just
Started it.
And then finally the day came. Boy,
Now, earlier, and you'd mentioned that your wife went through a lot of tough times too, but where did you meet then?
way later on at home, back in Hanover.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
she
had gone through.
she found her family finally, and they moved into a little upstairs room in a big house, and we actually met on the street. Her like younger sister, they were looking into the store, wanted to look at some Christmas presents. Me and the buddy were always out for girls. And hey,
now that you had enough to eat, you were back to girls again.
That doesn't look too bad. They snickered, and of course we snickered back, and then where do you live? Oh, and then she didn't want to know, want to have nothing to do with me. And I had more girlfriends than one. She knew some of them, and it was a nice time.
So your name was out. Okay, now, when did you get married over there, and then how did you come to America, or did you come to Canada? How did you finally decide to leave there?
Actually, a lot of my buddies in the late 50s went to Canada, Australia. Adventurous mostly. Germany.
Was Canada easier to go to than the United States?
Definitely, Canada needed people, they still do.
Oh, okay.
Canada needed especially craftsmen. You had no trouble. It took about 6 months before you got the visa, but you had to be X-rayed. The Canadian doctor checked you at the embassy. You had to be healthy. Otherwise, they wouldn't let you into Canada. And
were you married then when you came over here?
Married. I had 3 kids. 2 went to school in Germany.
Oh, no,
And I actually didn't think of leaving Germany, but some of my buddies came back on vacation.
Were you working as an engraver over
Yeah.
there at that time?
Oh, the German economy was just booming. There was no reason to leave. I changed jobs probably the last 6 months before I left, every second week.
How old were your boys when you came over?
All the boys were 6 and 7.
So they remember that too then, okay.
Oh yeah, and the third one, he was 3, I guess. They remember not much anymore. You don't remember much when you were 7.
Mm-hmm.
But they went to school over there. And, I went. A lot of my buddies came back. Australia, she had a cousin, but he said, stay away from Australia. There's unemployment, big unemployment. Mm-hmm. And the same was actually the case in Canada. Germany was booming. I could have a job every second day someplace else.
But why? Then what made you want to leave?
But I worked like an idiot, 12 hours a day. I took molds home and polished. The wife polished stoned molds. We never had money to spend. The life was too expensive. And one guy came from Canada, he said, boy, it's not that bad. He worked as a tool maker in Toronto. And he already had a big street cruiser, they called them, a big Oldsmobile. All I could afford in Germany was a bicycle. And boy, I said, boy, it might not be a bad idea. I was away for many years anyways, a little bit adventurous all the time anyways. Mm-hmm. So I went to Canada first alone. I said, let me scout it out. I didn't like it at all. I came to Canada 45 below in Winnipeg, and I just had a light coat, the German kind of.
Yeah.
They picked me up at the airport, snow, mountains. Oh, that was so cold. Didn't speak the language. next morning I had to work, and boy, they're all British guys, Scottish guy, Ukrainian, Canadians, whole bunch of German tool makers in that shop. So I didn't learn much English then. Broisted was in charge of that shop.
Oh, Richard was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He actually got me over to Canada.
Hmm.
He came to the engraving shop and he said, "Do you know a guy that wants to go to Canada?" And my boss said, "Oh, he's talking about Australia." So I got to know Brewster, and it came to the point I stayed with his mother-in-law in boarding room.
Hmm.
I didn't like it. And I saw the people running around like slobs in Canada, the shoes open, the overshoes, and dirty and messy. And I figured I can't get my kids into this. They live in such a cultivated place there, and everything is in order. I wrote to my wife, I said, "I'll be back. I'll work overtime here, and I pay back my bill, and because the shop paid for my trip. But when I want to go back, I had to pay it back. So in 3 months, I worked so many overtimes, I paid back my ticket, and my uncle helped me in Germany to get me back to Germany. And I went to New York, and from then on the New Amsterdam, that was a giant ocean liner. I went by ship, and on the ship I talked to a lot of Americans and Canadians and immigrants, and they said, "Boy, it takes longer than 3 months before you're comfortable. You have to give it some time."
Man, you went at the worst time.
Yeah, and you have to give it some time. It's nice over here in the New World. And I have seen some good things too. We went fishing and ice fishing, and we made some trips all over the place. Anyways, I went back. And on the way back, I figured, boy, actually give my family a chance. And on the way back, I figured maybe we're all good.
Give it a try.
Yeah. And I came home, and she sold all the furniture already. And I said, no, she got the furniture back, which she sold already. Everything what she could get back. And on the railway station, I said, and they all picked me up, I said, "We're all going." "What?" "Yeah, we're all going." Piss on it. And then it took another, then I had to work like an idiot again to scrape some money.
But there was plenty of work to do.
Yeah, the shop where I worked, they were so glad that I came back. And he said, I'll pay your trip back here if you stay. I said, "I'm sorry, I decided already I will leave again." They didn't want to let me go. But then we all went, and then of course you're responsible for the whole gang. The kids don't speak the language, the wife don't speak. The kids have to go to school. Where do we go to school? We started out in a real shabby area, under the roof, and some rusty bed in there, and an old fridge, and the people sneaking out in the house, and they told us right away, no noise after 9 o'clock and all that BS. And I figured, boy, what did I do? Took my family into this. But then the wife really pushed me. She said, you straighten out now. We're all here, and we're all satisfied. Food was cheap, milk and all that stuff was cheap. And we got better and better, moved
So
into
you had to
different
just make those adjustments, didn't you?
Yeah, and we moved a few times till we rented half of a duplex. And that's when the kids could finally go into school. And there were some German kids there, they were helping them out. They were there years before already. And they picked up English after 6 weeks. We took them along shopping as translators. 6 weeks they already
The kids
could handle the language.
Is that right?
Yeah, and that was tough. And now Broisted, after a few years, he left to the States.
You came down here then?
Yeah, he opened up an engraving shop, and then he said, "Heinz, why don't you come down here?" And we moved again. And I had so many friends up there. It
Was that hard to move? I mean, legally, could you move from Canada into the
No,
United States?
no, that took a whole year.
You had to apply for that?
Again, yeah. We had to see the American embassy in Winnipeg. And there again, we were x-rayed and the American doctor again, and blood pressure and all this stuff. He said, I mean, this was 40 years ago. He said, your blood pressure is a little high, you watch it.
40 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays everybody comes in.
Yeah,
AIDS people, everybody's coming
That's
in now.
different, isn't it? There should be.
And in those days, they watched it.
So it was watched better in those days.
Yes, yes.
By far, I mean.
It was very strict. And I had to have, I remember Richard Boyce had to put an ad in 3 states for an engraver before they let me come into this country. He said he naturally didn't find an engraver. So, but he said, I need one. And that's when they finally gave us the visas, $100 for each visa. That was a lot of money then. And that's when we started out here. It wasn't easy anyways. I didn't know anybody except Royce did. I wasn't that close to him. I had all the buddies up there in Canada, and I was really in bad shape again. I wanted to go back to Canada. I had a good job.
Yeah, you really didn't have anybody you knew here then, did you?
No, and I had a good job in Canada, in a die-cast outfit. We had a nice engraving department, interesting jobs. Some are there up on that green things.
Yeah.
They were all cut in Canada. Die-cast jobs.
Yeah.
So, and then finally...
Well, then of course you came here, and as time went by, Bruce had eventually sold the engraving business to you, and you lived. Then you worked out of the other place. And now you're in this nice location here, and working.
We saw you many times, coming over, and
working.
we came to you.
Yeah, one other thing here. I made a note here. At one time, Dönitz was the admiral of the German Navy. Did he send out Christmas? You told me a story once about Christmas cards he'd send.
Yeah, I wrote to him. I wrote to him.
How did you ever get the right to Dönitz? I mean, this was the top guy
No,
of the German Navy.
Yeah, this was through the shark hunters. I knew they gave me the address.
Dönitz never seen your little blue book, though, did he?
No, and I probably wouldn't be one of his favorite soldiers. And he made the rules, so he was a tough guy. No, with the shark hunters, we went to visit Dönitz's grave too.
But actually, when he was living, you actually send him cards then?
No, yeah, when he was living, but after the war.
Yeah.
I sent him Christmas cards, and I had about 5 Christmas cards signed by him.
Yeah.
And he sent me a picture, him in an admiral's uniform, and with
But he was in charge of the whole German Navy. He was about as...
before
He
it
was,
only
he was in
someone-
the Navy what Goering was in the Air Force.
Yeah, yeah. And later on he was, after Hitler killed himself, he was supposed to be second in command, you know.
Yeah.
But Dönitz saved thousands of refugees from the East, because he sent the whole Navy there, pick up whatever you can. That's why Dönitz wasn't executed in Nuremberg. You know, they executed many generals in Nuremberg.
Now, when you and I had the phone conversation, we were kind of getting to the end here, you said, well, you know, you had some interesting stories, but you had this uncle that had some interesting stories.
That is a whole book.
And
It's a whole book.
But in brief, can you relate for us on the camera a little bit of who he was and what he did?
I must have
man.
inherited his ideas of not really
Conforming?
conforming. You know,
Well, why don't you tell us
because-
just a few little stories about
Because
it?
he actually started out before the war, joined the Panzer units, when Rommel was just a little guy, company lieutenant or something. Under Rommel he was. They had the black uniforms with a skull on the head, you know. And he was always with the tank units in the Eastern Front. And his wife always wrote these stupid letters to him, you know. And when you're out there in the front lines, you think about home all the time. And she wrote him these sad letters. I wish you were here and all that stuff, and it just drove him nuts. And that one time.
At that point, he'd been in the army for a few years, though.
Oh yeah, he was. He was in the army before the war. And the Germans were on the retreating. And that must have been so well organized that they even found out he deserted. He was supposed to bring. He was on a person, not really a tank, but a thing between a tank and a truck. Personal carrier or something.
Personal carrier, half tracks, yeah.
He was supposed to bring food to the front line. Halfway there, he just left everything. He left everything and turned around. He told back at his unit, I got shot and everything is destroyed. And somehow, I really don't know how, he made it possible that he acted as a lieutenant. He got maybe a wounded officer, so he took the uniform.
Oh.
And he now at least was an officer. But he went on trains that went back home with wounded people, and he was hiding in one of them trains. He shaved himself with urine, you know. And he made it back to Hanover and took some civilian clothes, and I really don't know how long he did this, but I was on leave from the Navy, and I met him, and he said, let's go, there's a nice place outside Hanover. And there we said, all soldiers, there was no dancing allowed during the war, just drinking thin beer. And in come these military police. They had these big shields hanging here. Everybody was shaking, but I was okay. They checked all the books and vacation papers, and I looked. He disappeared. He went into the toilet, waited till they're gone, and he comes out again. I don't want to see these guys. And I had no idea what was happening.
You didn't even know he was deserted from the army.
They could have nailed me too by kind of helping him.
Yeah.
And then he was hiding.
Especially with your record being so bad.
Yeah. Oh, they didn't know that. Hiding from one place to another, always on the go. And the damn Gestapo was after him. After one lousy guy. And then his wife's hometown is in Thuringia, Eastern Germany. They had a bakery, and she said, nobody actually knew, not even her relatives. You go upstairs, there's a room there. There are curtains. Don't you move during the day, because the old floor wooden plates, they crack all the time. So that poor devil was in bed there all day. At night, he then opened the window a little bit, and she brought him food up there after the bakery.
Now, did you say he dressed like a woman then, too?
On the way there, my mother said that poor devil had to leave again, Hanover. So
He had to go from Hanover to that other city.
Yeah. My mother had long black hair. She cut that off, and they put it together like a little scarf, and he put a scarf on, and the hair was peeking out of there, like a woman. And even my brother, he was a little guy then, he had to come along. And his name was Willem, but they called him Wilhelmine. And he almost went into a toilet for guys at the airport, at the railroad station. And then soldiers came and tried to, hey, how's it going? And my mother said, leave my sister alone, you come over here. Kind of hitting him.
The guys were, he was dressed like a woman, and the guys were going after him.
Oh, no. That would be a nice movie. Spielberg could make a nice movie of it. And then like I said, there's a long things in between
Yeah.
still, hiding and sneaking. And then one day he made a mistake. He put that curtain out a little bit, and one guy went by there, and he looked up by chance, and he saw that curtain moving. And it's a little village, so they knew that people were looking for him. And he reported, there's somebody up there in that attic where nobody ever lives. So one day he heard some cars, Gestapo's in big Mercedes cars coming by, there's some jeeps. He sees these suckers come up. So he takes his gun and I figured, what the heck should I do? Pull a bullet in my head or shoot those guys? Can't do it anyways, 5, 6 guys. They knock on the door, open up, we know you're in there. So he opens it up, they put handcuffs on, take him along. So he goes for a war tribunal. All these serious.
See, now that was a tribunal, wasn't it?
That was a tribunal, yes,
Yeah.
no civilians.
Yeah.
He sits there and his defender was a young SS officer. And that SS officer said, don't you worry, they don't kill anybody anymore, they need everybody at the Eastern Front. And he came into a special camp, labor camp, with all people that had a death sentence. And then he said, any volunteers here? We need people at the Eastern Front. Any volunteers? Half of the guys said, oh, I'll go.
Now we're back to hearing some more of Heinz's story, and he was talking,
Yeah.
I think, well, you were on your uncle, was it? Or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Then they finally put a transport together and put them on the Eastern Front, first line. Most people didn't make it out of there, and my uncle said, he was in a foxhole with another guy. He said, boy, the only way to get out here alive is we have to be wounded.
Mm.
What do you mean? What do you mean? You shoot me and I
Well, wait a
shoot
minute,
you?
now, just, I think I lost you here. He volunteered to go to there?
Yeah. Most of them guys were
Well, why did he
because this
volunteer to
one-
go to that? When,
out of this labor camp.
just to get out of the labor
Yes,
camp?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Because most of them probably would be executed. That stay in
Oh,
there.
okay.
They all had a death sentence. But this
Mm.
SS officer said, don't worry, they don't kill anybody anymore. But how can you
No-
make sure?
Nobody believed that.
No.
So
So-
that's why he had to get out of there.
Of course, he said,
Yeah.
there I have a chance maybe to run away again. And he said, you shoot first and I'll shoot you then. Okay.
So now they had gone from that camp, they
Right on in the front line, Eastern Front.
put him out to the Eastern Front.
Yes.
Now that was in the war was just starting at that time with
No,
Russia,
no,
or
that was on the way.
it was in the,
On the way.
but the
back.
Germans were still over
They
in
were
Russia.
still in Russia,
They were
yes.
still in Russia.
Mhm.
Yeah, so and German troops were being
But they retreated quick, you know what I mean.
yeah.
And in this foxhole, he said, you shoot first and I'll shoot you. And the guy shot him in the arm right here. And my uncle passed out, blacked out, couldn't shoot this guy anymore.
Mm.
And my uncle got pulled back.
Because he was
And,
wounded. Huh?
yeah, he was a wounded guy. Now they didn't know, the medics didn't know that this was a camp guy, so to speak. And the other guy died. He died in the battle.
Oh.
And my uncle now he was a
Now then that's how then he got put into the hospital, or he got out
yes,
of the main
and
front.
there were so many people in the hospital, wounded soldiers. Nobody really could keep track of him anymore. He was now a wounded soldier. Now the war was over, and his wife being from East Germany, he went back there, And then came the border, split Germany. And now he was a hero in East Germany because he deserted the German army, and now he was a hero over there. They made him,
Because he got wounded in Russia.
not because of that, because he deserted.
Oh.
He was a deserter, a German deserter. And in East Germany, which became communist,
Oh, that's right.
Russian
yeah.
friendly, this guy didn't want to fight for the Germans anymore. He's a deserter, he's a hero. And he...
By the Russians he was a hero.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the East Germans too,
Mhm.
of course, which was now a communist country. And he joined the East German police force, became a captain, and actually had not a bad life, but him and his buddy and the wives, one night they decided, let's take off here, this stinks. And it was bad in East Germany, they had nothing. So they bought a East German military vehicle and crashed through the border. Bang, right through that. The border got shut after them. And
Before they put the wall up?
the border was there actually. The wall was only in Berlin.
Oh.
All the rest had just barbed wires and watchtowers and beams across the street, and they just crashed the beam and went through. And the whole family back to West Germany. The Americans actually made them return that vehicle to the East German police. But the guys were free all of a sudden.
When had you had a chance, did you ever see your uncle after that?
Yeah.
Or not?
Yeah, at one time he told me the whole story, boy, that was very interesting.
Then you understood why you always had the problems in the army you had then.
Yeah,
in the Navy.
he was always a guy that
Yeah,
revolted,
quite a question.
but he was my favorite uncle. He
Yeah.
always smelled real sweet. He was a
Yeah.
baker,
Mhm.
and he always brought us some goodies.
One of the things that we discussed when we were eating, and we're about ready to wind it down, but one of the things we talked about was during this time that you were in the war, you mentioned that you never really felt that you were losing the war
No.
because you always had the hopes. Why did you have these hopes, or what made you think that even though you were losing it, why didn't you realize that?
Duane, there's one good reason. We never were informed of the casualties. We didn't know that.
Mhm.
That some weeks, 20 submarines were destroyed. We didn't know that.
Mm.
They never told that but the propaganda machine was very well developed.
Mm.
It was always, yes, the miracle weapons are just about ready and we are fighting back. And
Well, and you did show me some pictures of the sub that was it
that was the one that
was the
supposed
20,
to,
the U-20? or
21, type
U-21.
21. That was supposed to do the change, to bring the...
And they were actually building those at that time
Yes.
already.
Oh, you saw them in a Hamburg shipyard, in Gdansk you saw them. What was dancing?
So you really always were, even though you were losing, you were always looking, or you were being informed that this is going to be the miracle weapon that's going to come up and actually get
Not
us
only
into
this one sub, I mean, we knew about jet fighter
being
planes.
developed, yeah.
We knew about V rockets.
Mhm.
And boy, we figured all this effort, this can't be for nothing.
Yeah, it would be, all this, you know.
There has to be a turnaround.
Mhm.
You know.
Well, anyway, this has certainly been an interesting review. I'm looking forward to reviewing it and putting it back on a tape myself.
Yeah.
And I think we've never had, in our busy lives, Heinz, we've never had time
No.
to sit
Didn't
down.
have time.
We've only heard the little short stories all the time.
There are a lot A lot of little stories in between,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah, and
Survival stories. And
I'm glad we could capture that, and I think in winding this down, there's two things I'm going to do. I noticed in the other office over there, there's a picture on the wall of Heinz as a young man, and it may be a little glary, but we'll unhook the camera here and I'll take a picture of that, and when I get back to Phoenix,
have to tell you one thing. My boys many times are wasting food by throwing away half a sandwich and stuff. I don't do that. And they say, hey, those days are over. You're here now. I said, I can't forget those days.
No.
And I tell them a few stories out of the prison camp. For instance, at one time, there was a gang. One guy was a Russian-speaking guy, so he had a few connections. And he had a little circle of guys around him, some butt kissers. I was kind of friendly, but I wasn't involved in his escapades. And they found a kitty in town. I never saw one in 5 years. They killed it. They brought it back into the camp and they fried it, baked it on an open stove. And these 3-4 guys now sit down and you can imagine the smell. Oh, meat, fried meat.
Whether it's cat or not.
Oh.
And it would probably be a lot like rabbit, I would imagine.
Yeah, and these guys now sit down and start eating, and a lot of hungry eyes. But they ate only half the kitty, and let's keep the other for tomorrow. So the one guy puts it close to his pillow. But in the middle of the night, a guy from my hometown sneaks up there, real quiet, and steals the remains of the kitty, and he eats it. And one guy just took a piss and he saw him go out of there. They killed the guy. They beat him till he died, and we buried him behind the camp in the sand hills. And nobody ever did anything because this guy was buddy with the Russians.
You mean
for
the guy,
half a cat?
The guy that
Stole the cat.
ate half a cat, they beat him up?
Killed him.
They beat him to death?
Yes. And the Russians didn't do anything because he was kind of friendly with the
kind of
Russians.
informer too.
Yeah. And then on the way home from a paper mill, the Russians like to shoot, and they showed it for the first day on by killing
And they were drunk a lot too then, weren't they?
Yeah, but these guards weren't drunk. That brought us to the factory and back. But they were always shooting, you know, a wire up there, electric wire, they were shooting at. And there's far away sits a crow on one of them posts, electric posts. And he was a good shot. He aims and bang, the crow goes down. And 30 or 40 prisoners on the way there to pick up that crow. He made another shot in the air, back, everybody back. You, he looked at me because I didn't run. You pick up the crow. Oh. So I went there, you keep it. He gave me the crow, and of course I cleaned it up and I cooked it back in the camp, and I split it with one of my buddies. That was like the best chicken I ever had.
What does crow taste like?
Like they say, like chicken.
Like chicken.
Yes. Maybe it tasted better then.
Yeah. So you got the crow, huh?
Yeah.
So there's
See, they have some brain too, these Russians. They figure, this little guy here, he doesn't even run because he doesn't have a chance to get it. He gave it to me.
So is that where the term came, eat crow?
I don't know, that crow was excellent. That was excellent.
Yeah.
Though they ate everything they could.
Well, Heinz, this has certainly been an enjoyable evening for us, and we'll
we talked about it quite a while ago already.
Oh yeah.
And I would really recommend to you to contact this
I think
this Harry Cooper.
Yeah.
That is such a smart guy.
Yeah.
And a nice guy to talk to.
All right.
This guy has a head like a computer. He knows at least 5 addresses, phone numbers, and names of former submarine commanders. Where they live now, the house number, their phone number. He has all that in his head. He's a smart guy and nice to talk to. Has a good sense of humor.
Okay, once again, thank you, Heinz, and
Okay,
we'll move
Dwayne.
on to the other. And
You want to take a picture there, huh?
Yeah, I'll take a picture of that. And
I have a lot of Navy pictures at
I
home.
want to wish you too on camera here much success for you and your family and your operation here. And I always marvel at how fathers and sons can work like this. And
Let's hope
you got your thing going, and times get tough, but you seem to get through 'em.
Yeah, let's hope things turn on. But we depend on guys like you that bring us the jobs.
Yeah.
Tool and die makers.
Okay.
That's our bread and butter.
So we'll go get the picture then.
Okay.
Signing off for now. Okay, Heinz, we're in your office and we're looking at a picture on the wall. Can you describe when it was taken, who's in it, and what the occasion was?
Actually, this was the commissioning of U-720. And as you can see, they are hiding a finished submarine between tugboats and fishing boats and cranes, and so they wouldn't be detected by airplanes that easy.
Now the sub is off to the left. Am I correct there?
Yeah, this is the bow of the sub is right here where we are.
Oh, okay.
And that's the back and back there.
Okay.
This is the cover for one of the periscopes.
Oh, okay. So you're on the sub then.
And this is the battery vents, left and right.
Oh, okay. All right, now.
Battery gases and fumes.
Now I'm zooming in, and you are the guy way in the back.
Beside the guy with a
harmonica.
harmonica, yeah.
Yeah. I got you on here.
See, these are the mates with the stripe here, and this is a machine mate. He has a gear in his anchor.
Okay, maybe I can zoom in on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how they were set up for different.
Yeah, this is a machine personnel too. He has the same gear. And as deck personnel, we had a star on the arm.
Now the guy beside you, again, I'll bring it back here. What was he? What was his? Was he a deckman just like you?
Yeah.
Then?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was actually a law student, so he was a smart guy, and he argued a lot with the officers.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. Well, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to zoom in on this nice young fella here, so many years ago, and we'll leave our picture with a young man, not an old man. So
Yeah.
that's how we're going to let Heinz out of this film here, and this will be it. And I'll try and film the sub when I get back home. Okay, I'm back in Phoenix, and this is a U-boat very similar to the one that Heinz was on. It may be a little bit newer version because the one that Heinz boat did not have a snorkel, and this one does have the snorkel, which was probably put on in the last years of the war. The detail otherwise was pretty much the same. They also may have added anti-aircraft guns instead of the traditional deck guns that used to be on the earlier U-boats. But the basic size of this U-boat, which was I think 180 feet long, not really very big by any standards, that kind of would correspond to the one that he was on. So I just felt it was kind of fitting and appropriate that we close down this interview with, it wasn't all of his life, but he certainly has some interesting stories to tell and relate to that. So with that, we're going to close down the interview with Heinz, and again I thank him for the time he spent sharing these moments with us.